I'm recording my homily for the 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time, and I'm actually up at a place that my family and extended family have, and I've been just doing a little work on my day off, and I caught it between rain showers, so I figured I'd record my homily before taking the ferry back home. So in your house, especially if you have kids, right, you're going to have rules. And I know one of the rules that families will often have when they have little kids around or they have the grandkids around is not to be jumping up and down on the furniture, right? Not climbing up on the dining room table and walking around on it, obviously, right? Not getting up on the counters, climbing up on the counters. Now, if a child is going to disobey that rule, what would be the reasons for a child getting up on the furniture and like jumping up and down on the furniture? Well, children, they don't really need a reason. It's just got to be fun, right? If it's just fun, then they'll weigh the consequences. It's like, if I do it, I'll get in trouble. It's worth it, right? So then they get up there and they jump up and down on the furniture. Now, let's say that you come home and your wife is jumping up and down on the furniture, right? Because she's just so overjoyed, just so happy. What would be an example of a reason that would cause your wife to do that? Well, at Mass, somebody blurted out, she won the lottery, right? All right, then you don't have to worry about rent again or paying the mortgage. Other reasons, the kids clean their rooms and I didn't even need to ask them, right? And I didn't need to use dynamite to clean their rooms. My kid graduated from high school. Hallelujah, thank you, Lord, right? I mean, now, as I start going on and as I was thinking about this, the things that often give us the most joy, where we have this huge emotional response to, there's some kind of victory. There's something happened that was really good, right? There's a victory in it. Okay, now, let's say you come home and your husband is jumping up and down on the furniture, right? What would cause a grown man to jump up and down on the furniture? Well, I'm going to tell you one, being from the Seattle area. I've been up at the cabin, so I didn't watch the Seahawks game, but they were playing an undefeated team in the NFL, and they won in overtime. So I didn't watch it, but I can imagine in the Seattle area, there were a couple grown men who were jumping up and down on the furniture with that game, right? So sports, you think of sports. Someone at Mass said, "Oh, the kids are finally out of the house." Be jumping up and down on the furniture. Yeah. Okay. Those are kind of silly examples. But when you think of the things that really do give us joy, there's some type of victory in there, right? Celebration of a victory. The Sadducees today. Now I'm going to differentiate the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees and the Pharisees, it's almost like the Democrats and the Republicans, right? They don't agree on a whole lot, but they're all part of the same institution, right? They're part of the same government. So they have to work together, at least on some level, right? So the Sadducees do not believe in the resurrection. It says that in the gospel. And so they go after Jesus because Jesus keeps talking about this resurrection. And the Pharisees are going to go at him for other reasons. But on this point, the Pharisees actually really do agree with Jesus. They believe in the resurrection. So the Sadducees don't. So they come up with this scenario to trap Jesus. Now, the gospel this last weekend had nothing to do with marriage. The 7 brothers marrying this woman. It was all about the resurrection. They were trying to put a doubt in the people's minds, but also they were trying to trap Jesus in trying to prove that there is no resurrection, okay? So I want to talk about the resurrection and the reason Jesus so much wants us, but even back then, wanted them to believe in the resurrection. To believe in the victory, right? To believe in victory. And understand that all the things that we go through here on earth really are not the final victory. They're all part leading up to. It's like they're part of the game, if you will. This game of life, right, is leading up to or pointing to this incredible victory. Now, how to get there, okay? I'm going to use a couple things. I've said them before, but as they say, repetition is the mother of all teaching, okay? So how to get to this victory? Well, all you have to do is look at the cross of Jesus, right? So imagine I have a cross here. You look at the cross of Jesus, and you look at the things that he gave up, especially at that critical moment in his life, that finality, if you will, that final test, when he's on the cross, the things that he gave up all point to something more that he desires to give us as part of this final victory, the resurrection. Okay? So what did he give up? He gave up wealth. When he's on the cross, he has nothing. He has nothing, right? They even take his cloak, they take his garments, they tear them, they gamble for them. And we often show him with a little cloth on. But the Romans wanted to shame their prisoners. They wanted to shame the people they crucified. And so they would often not even let them have that, just to shame their people, to shame their family, everyone, right? So no wealth. He had no honor, obviously. He's dying a shameful death. In fact, for the Jewish people, to die on a cross, to die, as they said, nailed to it, hanging from a tree, was a sign of being cursed. And so Jesus is allowing himself to be deprived of all honor. There's no honor in what he's doing in that moment from the perspective of the people. And so he's giving these things all up. There's no power. He's fixed. He can't move. There's no power at all, right? And so he gives up all of that. And there's no pleasure, obviously. And so these four things, wealth, honor, power, and pleasure, he has none of that up on the cross. So he's willing to make a great sacrifice for the sake of this victory. This is the path, right? He's demonstrating to us the plan, the path, in order to get to this resurrection where there's this final victory over death and sin and evil and hate and all these things. After he rises, there's a new wealth. When we die and we rise and we participate in Jesus' resurrection, there's this new wealth of being part of something so magnanimous, something so huge, right? Honor in heaven, to be part of the communion of saints, you and I, all of us, to be part of the communion of saints, to be part of the glory of God. What an honor in that. But you notice as we're describing these things are not self-centered. These are participating in something so much more. But are we willing to suffer for the sake of getting there? To sacrifice to get there. And then to understand power and pleasure differently, more as to participate in God's power and in his authority and in his righteousness and justice and the power of his mercy. There was a quote, God's might is his mercy, right? God's might is forgiveness. And then pleasure, joy. Just have a deep, profound joy of having fought the fight, of having won that battle by God's power, but been faithful through to the end, right? So there's a story you're all familiar with. So we had Veterans Day yesterday, and I was just thinking of that, and there's a movie, very famous movie, I'm sure many of you have seen it, which is a true story, and it depicts a soldier in World War II who was a conscientious objector, which means he was unwilling to take up arms, he was unwilling to kill people, and it was because of his own Christian religious beliefs that he was unwilling to do that. But he signed up, he wasn't drafted, he enlisted, because he wanted to serve. And so the army was really confused. It's like, you want to serve, but you don't want to kill the enemy. And he's like, right. He says, I'll be a medic. I want to save people. Well, as he goes in the army, nobody understands what he's doing. They all think he's a coward because he won't take up arms, because he won't kill. They don't understand that his mind is so powerfully connected to a bigger victory, right? He wants to participate, but in the context of his faith, as he understands it. Well, they try to drum him out of the army. They try to do anything they can to get him out. And he perseveres, but he has no honor. He's completely rejected in a sense, but he just keeps doing his thing. He perseveres. Well, fast forward, they get into this really horrible battle in World War II, and it goes really bad. And so a bunch of the American soldiers are shot, and they're injured and wounded, and they're lying on the battlefield. Well, they have to retreat, and so all these soldiers get left out there on the battlefield. And as the sun goes down, they're basically just easy pickings for the enemy. And so the enemy begins to go through during the night looking for injured soldiers to kill them. Well, this one particular soldier, who's the paramedic, this conscientious objector, he stays up there. And all through the night, he just slowly, very secretly, very quietly begins to rescue these injured soldiers by just sneaking them off the battlefield. They were up on this high plateau, and so he sneaks them down off this plateau. Well, by morning's end, he's rescued, and I don't remember how many, but it was like 80 or 100 soldiers. I mean, just an incredible number. He's so exhausted by morning, he just collapses. The morning, the resurrection, right? But he had to die first. Now, what's so profound and so moving, and how this movie depicts it, is the honor now that his fellow soldiers had for him, because they watched him live his faith in such a powerful way. And so he went from having no honor like Jesus on the cross to having incredible honor. And everybody now wants to follow him. In fact, the next day, they won't even go into battle until he leads them. And he's a paramedic. His superiors, they don't know what to do. They've never witnessed that kind of honor before. It's really moving to see that. But there's this moving scene. Now, maybe as a priest, I'm the only one who would appreciate it. But before they're going into battle the next day, they're all standing there watching him because he's doing his prayers. He says he can't go into battle until on the Sabbath he does his prayers. And once he's finished, they're all waiting for him to lead. It's really moving. And so you think of Jesus on the cross, and you know, we use it as a symbol of our victory, of the resurrection in a sense, right? But really what we're showing the world is we're willing to suffer for this great glory, for God's glory. We're willing to suffer and do anything to bring about this beautiful final victory. And so when Jesus pleads with the Sadducees, he pleads with the Pharisees. He reaches out to those who are suffering and dying and the sinners, pleading with sinners. He wants us all to be part of this final victory. All right. God bless you, and I'll see you next week.